Grandkids, what outdated tech did your grandparents hilariously misuse? My grandma Vivian held her smartphone like it was a slice of pizza. Fingers on the back, screen facing her face, thumb extended awkwardly to tap. She bought it in 2019 at age 78 after my mom finally convinced her she needed one. Within 2 weeks, she'd called 911 4 times by accident, joined a Mormon Bible study group on Facebook, and somehow added 83 random men named Carlos to her contacts. She also became convinced that the camera could read her mind. Vivian, that's not how phones work. Oh, sweetheart, you don't know what they can do these days. She held the phone in front of her face every morning and asked it questions out loud. Phone, what should I make for dinner? One time her phone showed her an ad for tilapia. She made tilapia for 9 days in a row. My grandpa Bernie was the opposite. He refused to touch any technology made after 1985. He had a flip phone he used exclusively to call my grandma. He thought email was a fad and called his Gmail account his email box and never opened it. My grandma loved sending him things on Facebook Messenger anyway. She'd be in the kitchen, he'd be in the den, and she'd message him from across the wall. Bernie, dinner ready. He never got the messages but somehow always showed up. The first hint something was wrong came in October. My grandma started forgetting things. Small things. Where she put her glasses. The name of our neighbor of 26 years. My mom took her to the doctor. Early stage Alzheimer's. My grandpa cried for 3 days. Then he did something none of us expected. He bought a smartphone. He spent 4 hours every afternoon at the library taking the free senior tech classes. Within a month, my 83-year-old grandfather, who had refused to learn anything since 1985, could text, video call, and use 3 different apps fluently. He never told my grandma he could. He kept pretending to be terrible with technology. She'd laugh and call him her little dinosaur. We didn't understand why he was hiding it until we did. My grandma's memory got worse fast. The only person she always remembered was my grandpa. Even on her worst days, she knew Bernie. The problem was, she'd start to forget where Bernie was. She'd wake up at 3 a.m. in their bed, see him sleeping next to her, and panic because she didn't know how he got there. She'd think he'd been kidnapped. She'd think he was dead. She'd shake him awake, screaming. My grandpa never slept more than 2 hours at a time for 3 straight months. That's when he made the videos. He recorded 67 videos on his phone. Each one was short. In each video, he sat in their bedroom or on their porch or in the kitchen and talked directly to her. Vivian, it's me, Bernie. I'm right here. If you're watching this, you forgot for a minute. That's okay. I love you. I'm in the next room or I'm asleep next to you. I'm not gone. He recorded one for every situation he could think of. He saved them all in a folder on her phone labeled Bernie. He sat with her for hours and taught her. Vivian, if you forget, you open this folder, you tap any video, I'll be there. She'd cry every time. Bernie, why are you doing this? Because I love you, kiddo. For the next 2 years, those videos kept her sane. Sometimes she'd watch the same video 12 times in one night. He never complained. Then on a Tuesday in March, my grandpa had a heart attack. He died in their kitchen at 7:42 a.m. while making her oatmeal. I drove over as fast as I could. My grandma was sitting on the kitchen floor next to him, holding his hand, crying so hard she couldn't speak. The paramedics took him away. My mom and I sat with her for hours. She kept asking where Bernie was. We told her gently. We told her he was gone. She would nod, cry, and ask again 10 minutes later. Then she pulled out her phone, opened the folder labeled Bernie, tapped the first video. We all froze. We didn't know my grandpa had recorded one final video 3 weeks before he died. He looked at the camera and said, Vivian, if you're watching this, I'm gone. I'm so sorry, baby, but I left you something. The video kept playing. Bernie looked into the camera and I could see he was thinner than in the other videos. His cheeks were a little hollow, but his eyes were the same, steady, calm, like he'd already made peace with whatever was coming. He said, go to the closet in the den, top shelf, behind the box of Christmas lights. There's a blue notebook. That was it. The video ended. Vivian reached over and tapped the video again. She watched it a second time, then a third time. After the third time, she looked at me. Can you get it for me, sweetheart? My knees aren't so good today. I walked down the hall to the den. I pulled the closet open and reached behind the box of Christmas lights. My fingers touched something. A spiral notebook. Blue cover. Thick. The cover had writing on it in black marker. Big, blocky letters. It said, for Vivian. I carried it back to the living room like it was made of glass. I handed it to my mom because my hands were shaking too much. Virginia opened it to the first page and within about 3 seconds she was sobbing. The notebook was full. Page after page after page of handwritten entries. Hundreds of them. Each one was a memory. The first entry was about their first date. Bernie wrote about picking Vivian up in his dad's car and being so nervous he drove to the wrong restaurant. He wrote about how she laughed at him instead of getting mad, and how she said, well, wherever we end up is fine with me. There was one about a fight they had in 1987 about wallpaper. He wanted blue stripes. She wanted yellow flowers. He eventually let her pick the yellow flowers and wrote, she was right. The flowers looked better. I never told her that. Vivian, the flowers looked better. There was one about a trip to the coast where Bernie stepped on a jellyfish. Vivian laughed so hard she fell down in the sand. He wrote, you laughed for 20 minutes straight. I was in real pain, Vivian, but hearing you laugh like that was worth every sting. Every single entry was written the same way. Simple, clear, in Bernie's voice, like he was sitting across from her at the kitchen table just talking. Then Virginia turned to the very last page and something fell out. A folded piece of paper. It was a letter. On the outside it said, for Virginia and my granddaughter. We read it together. It said, I know I'm not going to be here forever. The doctor told me my heart wasn't great last year and I didn't tell anyone. I'm sorry, but I had to finish this first. The videos will help her in the short term. This notebook is for the long term. When she forgets our life, someone needs to read it to her every night, like a bedtime story. She always loved bedtime stories. I read it 3 times. He knew. He knew he was dying. He didn't tell anyone. He spent his last months at the library learning how to use a phone so he could record 67 videos for his wife. He spent them at the kitchen table filling this notebook page after page. He built the videos for the short term, and then he built the notebook for the long term. He planned for all of it. He was handing it to us because he couldn't finish it himself. He was saying, I did everything I could. Now it's your turn. Sitting there that afternoon, I wasn't sure I could carry it. I was 24 years old. I didn't know how to be the voice that keeps someone safe when the only voice she ever really wanted was his. The first week after the funeral answered that question for me, and the answer was, we were already dropping it. Vivian asked where Bernie was, roughly every 45 minutes. I started counting shocking because it felt like it was happening constantly. Every time someone had to tell her, and every time her face would crumble the same way, like she was hearing it for the very first time, because she was. One night my mom sat down at the kitchen table and put her head in her hands and said, "I can't keep doing this. I can't watch her lose him over and over again. It's killing me." That night, I decided to try the notebook. I sat down on the edge of Vivian's bed and opened it to the first entry. I read it out loud, slow and steady. I told her about Bernie picking her up in his dad's car, about driving to the wrong restaurant. Vivian listened quietly the whole time. When I finished, she smiled, just barely. Then she said, "That sounds like something Bernie would do." She didn't remember living it. She remembered him. She just didn't remember the life they'd built together. But she remembered him, and for now, that was something. She reached out and took my hand and fell asleep holding it. Then things got worse. Vivian started wandering the house at night. One night she opened the front door at 2 a.m. I found her standing on the porch in her nightgown. The next morning I went to the hardware store and bought a chain lock. Vivian figured out the chain lock within 2 days. That's when my mom brought up the idea I'd been dreading. Virginia called me and said it straight out. She thought we should look into an assisted living place. I said, "Grandpa didn't build all of this so we could put her somewhere. He built it so she could stay home." Virginia went quiet. Then she said, "He also didn't expect to die, sweetheart. This is bigger than a notebook." That was the start of the worst fight my mom and I have ever had. Virginia said, "You're 24 years old. You don't know what this takes. I've been her daughter for 53 years. You don't get to tell me what my father wanted." So I said, "He literally wrote it down, Mom. He wrote it down and handed it to us. We don't get to ignore that because it's hard." She just shook her head and hung up. We didn't talk for 2 days. And then came the night that nearly broke me. It was a Thursday. Around midnight, I heard a sound that made my whole body go cold. Vivian was screaming. I ran down the hall and pushed open her door, and she was sitting up in bed, her eyes wide open, shaking. She looked right at me and there was nothing there. No recognition. She looked at me like I was a stranger. I grabbed the phone from the nightstand and I opened the folder and I tapped the first video. Bernie's face filled the screen. She looked at the phone and then she slapped it out of my hand. Hard. It hit the wall and bounced onto the carpet. She shouted, "Who is that man? Why do you keep showing me this man?" I felt something inside me just give way. I picked up the phone, walked out of the bedroom, and closed the door behind me. Then I sat down on the hallway floor with my back against the wall and I cried. I sat there and for the first time I really truly wondered if my mom was right. If love wasn't enough to fight what was happening inside my grandmother's brain. I was still holding the phone. The screen was cracked from where it hit the wall, but it still worked. I opened it. The Bernie folder was right there. I pressed and held the folder icon until the little menu came up, the one with the option to delete. My thumb was right there, hovering. Maybe every time she saw his face on that screen and didn't recognize him, it was hurting her. Maybe the kindest thing I could do was get rid of it. My thumb moved closer to the delete option, and then I missed. My finger slid a little to the left, and instead of hitting delete, I tapped the folder open. My thumb, still clumsy and shaking, tapped one near the bottom that I'd never noticed before. This one just had a date. It was from about 2 months before he died. The video started playing, and there was Bernie sitting on the front porch. The light was that warm, late afternoon kind. He was wearing his green flannel, the one with the missing button on the left cuff. In this one, he looked at the camera differently, more direct. And when he started talking, I realized why. He wasn't talking to Vivian, he was talking to me. "Hey kid," he said, "if you're watching this, things probably got rough. Your grandma probably had a bad night. You're probably thinking about giving up. Don't." My hands started shaking so bad I almost dropped the phone again. He kept going. "She's going to have nights where she doesn't know me. She's going to have nights where she doesn't know you. That doesn't mean the love is gone. It means the love is buried, and she needs help digging it out. You keep reading, you keep playing the videos, you keep showing up, even when she pushes you away, especially when she pushes you away. Because one morning she's gonna wake up and she's gonna look at you and she's gonna say something that makes you realize she was in there the whole time. I promise you, kid, she's in there." The video ended. He knew. He knew this exact night would come. He recorded a video for it. Not for Vivian this time, for me. I played it again, then a fourth time. After the fourth time I called my mom. It was almost 2 a.m. She picked up on the second ring. Before she could say anything, I said, "Mom, I need to show you something. Come over, please." She made it in 12 minutes. We walked out to the porch together. I sat down on the porch bench, the same bench Bernie was sitting on in the video. I handed her the phone and hit play. When it ended, she just sat there staring at the screen. Then she whispered, "Play it again." Halfway through the second time she broke. She put her hand over her mouth and she bent forward and she cried like she was a kid again. And her dad was right there in front of her telling her it was going to be okay. When it finished, she looked at me and said, He knew. He knew exactly what would happen. He planned for all of it." She pulled me into her and I put my face against her shoulder and we just held each other on that porch. We sat out there for a while and then we started talking. Really talking. We made a plan. Virginia would stay at the house 3 nights a week. I would stay 4. We'd read from the notebook every single night, no matter what. We'd stop fighting each other and start fighting the disease together. When we finished, Virginia leaned back on the bench and looked at me and said, "Your grandfather was the most stubborn man I ever met. Looks like he passed it down to you." I said, "Skipped a generation. You're stubborn too, Mom." I went back inside and walked down the hallway to Vivian's room. She was sitting up in bed. The panic from earlier was gone. I sat down on the edge of the bed and picked up the blue notebook. "Want to hear a story, Grandma?" She looked at me. Her eyes moved to the notebook, then back to my face. "Is it about Bernie?" I nodded. She patted the bed beside her. "Then come sit closer, sweetheart. I want to hear every word." 3 months passed. The system worked. Some nights were bad, but most nights, Vivian fell asleep listening to stories about her own life read in my voice. She didn't always remember the stories. Sometimes I'd read the same entry 3 nights in a row and she'd react to it fresh every time, but she always relaxed when she heard them. Her body remembered what her mind couldn't. Then one morning in June, I got to the house early. I had my key in the lock before I noticed the smell, something warm and sweet drifting through the crack under the front door. I stepped inside and walked toward the kitchen, and then I stopped. Vivian was at the stove. She was standing there in her blue robe with her hair pinned up the way she used to wear it, and she was stirring something in a pot, the same pot Bernie used to use. She hadn't cooked anything in months. She'd forgotten how to use the stove, but there she was, stirring oatmeal like it was any other morning in 1997. I said carefully, "Grandma, what are you doing?" She didn't turn around. "Making breakfast for Bernie. He likes it with brown sugar. Not too much. He'll complain." My chest got so tight I had to take a breath through my nose just to stay standing? I didn't correct her. I walked over and stood beside her at the stove. Then she looked at me, and her eyes were clear, clearer than they'd been in weeks. She looked right at me, and she said, "He's gone, isn't he?" It wasn't a question. I nodded. She turned back to the pot and kept stirring. "I know," she said. "I keep forgetting, and then I remember, and it's like losing him again." She paused. The spoon stopped moving for just a second, but I had a dream last night. He was sitting on the porch. He told me to make the oatmeal anyway. He said you'd be hungry. I couldn't speak. Vivienne turned off the stove and scooped oatmeal into 2 bowls. She added brown sugar to both. Not too much. She set them on the table in the same spots where she and Bernie had eaten breakfast for over 40 years. "Sit down, sweetheart. Eat your breakfast." I sat down. The kitchen smelled like brown sugar and warm oats. The morning light came through the same window it always had. We ate together in silence, and for 10 minutes, everything was exactly the way it used to be. Then Vivienne looked down at her bowl and said quietly, "He was a good man, wasn't he? The best, Grandma." She nodded slowly. "I don't want to forget him." I reached across the table and took her hand. "You won't," I said. "I'll make sure of it." Vivienne squeezed my hand. She looked at me with those clear, clear eyes and said, "You sound just like him when you say that." I still read from the notebook every night. We're on our 3rd time through it now. Vivienne doesn't remember hearing the stories before, so every night they're brand new. I started adding my own entries to the back of the notebook a few weeks ago. Things Bernie didn't know about. Your granddaughter graduated college. Your daughter learned to cook your pot roast recipe. Your neighbor's dog had puppies and one of them looks exactly like the dog you had in 1976. I write them in the same simple style Bernie used. Sometimes, when Vivienne is having a good day, she'll hold the notebook and run her fingers over Bernie's handwriting without reading it. She'll trace the letters with her thumb, slow and careful, and then she'll look at me and say, "This is someone who loved me, isn't it? Your neighbor's dog had puppies and one of them looks exactly like the dog you had in 1976. I write them in the same simple style Bernie used. Sometimes, when Vivienne is having a good day, she'll hold the notebook and run her fingers over Bernie's handwriting without reading it. She'll trace the letters with her thumb, slow and careful, and then she'll look at me and say, "This is someone who loved me, isn't it?" I always say the same thing. More than anything in the world, Grandma. And Vivienne always smiles, every single time.